Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be diving into the world of veterinary neurology
Oh, cool.
with a fascinating research article about a new way to look at a challenging condition in dogs,
Okay.
Meningoencephalitis of unknown origin,
Yeah.
or MUO for short.
MUO. Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Imagine a dog showing all the classic signs of brain inflammation, but the standard tests don't give us a clear answer.
Right.
That's the frustrating reality of MUO. It's a blanket term for a whole bunch of inflammatory brain diseases that can look very similar, making a definitive diagnosis without a brain biopsy incredibly difficult.
Yeah, and the study explores whether a special type of MRI called arterial spin labeling, or ASL,
Right.
could help change that.
Yeah.
What's so special about ASL, it allows us to see how blood is flowing through different parts of the brain without injecting any contrast dyes,
Right.
which is a big plus for our furry patients.
Exactly. ASL uses labeled blood to measure cerebral blood flow, or CBF. It's like creating a real-time map of brain activity by highlighting areas with more blood flow. This can be incredibly valuable because changes in blood flow often precede visible structural changes on a standard MRI. It's like catching a problem early on before it becomes a full-blown traffic jam.
So the researchers took 31 dogs suspected of having MUO and gave them both standard MRI scans and ASL scans at the beginning of this study and again after at least 3 months of treatment.
Yeah.
What were they hoping to find?
They wanted to see if ASL could provide more information about MUO than standard MRI alone.
Yeah.
Could it help pinpoint where the inflammation was most active? Could it give us clues about different subtypes of MUO, which might explain why some dogs respond better to treatment than others? Could it even be used to monitor how well treatments are working? These were some of the big questions driving the study.
And what did they discover? It turns out that ASL revealed some pretty surprising findings, particularly regarding lesion locations and those all-important blood flow patterns.
Right. Let's start with lesion locations. As expected, the most common spots were the cerebral hemispheres and the brainstem.
Okay.
But a surprisingly high percentage of dogs also had lesions in their optic nerves.
Optic nerve involvement in MUO is often associated with a less hopeful outlook.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets interesting. In this study, most of the dogs with optic nerve lesions actually responded well to treatment and regained their vision.
That's a huge finding. It challenges our previous understanding of optic nerve involvement in MUO.
Wow.
And raises the question, could there be different subtypes of MUO? Some with a better prognosis even when the optic nerve is affected.
Yeah.
That's the crux of the matter.
So these findings about lesion locations, particularly the optic nerve, are fascinating. But to really grasp the significance, let's delve into the specific patterns they observed in the brains of these dogs.
Absolutely. Let's break it down. Out of the 29 dogs with MUO and detectable brain lesions, the lesion distribution was quite revealing. They found lesions in the cerebral hemispheres in 59% of the dogs, specifically within the cortical and subcortical parenchyma in 45%. The brainstem was affected in 55% of the dogs, with the pons being the most common site at 41%, followed by the mesencephalon at 34%.
So while both the cerebral hemispheres and brainstem are common locations for MUO lesions, the specific areas within those regions varied. What about the optic nerve lesions? Did they provide any further clues?
All 12 dogs with optic nerve lesions showed what we call flare hyperintensity, which essentially means those areas lit up on a specific type of MRI scan indicating inflammation. Interestingly, most of them also had some degree of T2-weighted hyperintensity, suggesting edema or swelling within the optic nerves.
Okay, so those findings provide more detail about the lesions themselves. But let's get to the heart of the matter. What did the ASL reveal about blood flow in these dogs' brains?
The ASL findings were truly remarkable. They found that about 1/3 of the dogs had focal perfusion changes, meaning areas of either increased or decreased blood flow in specific brain regions. Some areas had more blood flow than normal, while others had less.
So even within a single dog's brain, there could be areas with different blood flow patterns. What could explain these variations?
It likely reflects the complex interplay of inflammation, vascular changes, and neuronal activity. In the early stages of inflammation, you might see hyperperfusion or increased blood flow as the body tries to send more resources to the affected area. But as the disease progresses and causes more damage, you might start to see hypoperfusion or decreased blood flow, indicating impaired blood flow and potential tissue death.
That makes sense. It's like the body's initial response is to flood the area with help. But if the inflammation persists, it can eventually lead to damage and reduced blood flow. But here's what really caught my attention. 2/3 of the dogs had what's called global brain hypoperfusion.
That's right. Global hypoperfusion means reduced blood flow throughout the entire brain, even in areas that looked perfectly normal on a standard MRI. This suggests that MUO might have a much more widespread impact on brain function than we previously thought.
That's a big deal. It challenges our understanding of MUO and highlights the potential of ASL to provide a much more comprehensive picture of what's happening in the brain. But there's another intriguing aspect to the ASL findings: the changes in blood flow after treatment.
Oh, yeah.
So we've talked about the lesions and the blood flow patterns, but I'm curious about how those patterns changed after treatment. Did the researchers see any improvements?
Yes, and that's one of the most exciting aspects of this study.
Yeah.
Almost all of the dogs showed significant improvements in both focal and global perfusion after treatment. This means that those abnormal blood flow patterns, both in specific regions and throughout the entire brain, started to normalize as the dogs responded to treatment.
So ASL could potentially be used not only to diagnose MUO,
Right.
but also to track how well the brain is recovering during treatment. That's a game changer.
Absolutely. It gives us a window into the functional recovery process, allowing veterinarians to potentially tailor treatment plans more effectively and predict long-term outcomes.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier. The potential of ASL to help us understand the different forms of MUO. Did this study shed any light on that?
It definitely points us in the right direction. Remember those dogs with optic nerve involvement who responded well to treatment?
Yes.
That finding alone suggests that there might be subtypes of MUO with varying prognoses.
Right.
And while this study couldn't definitively link specific ASL patterns to different subtypes, it lays the groundwork for future research in that area.
It feels like we're on the cusp of a major breakthrough in how we diagnose and manage MUO and potentially other neurological conditions in dogs. But of course, more research is needed.
Absolutely. Larger studies with more diverse groups of dogs, and ideally with biopsy confirmation of the specific type of MUO they have, are crucial to validate these findings and explore the full potential of ASL.
This research is a giant leap forward, offering a glimpse into a previously hidden world within the brain. It has the potential to revolutionize our understanding and treatments of these complex diseases.
It's a powerful reminder that there's always more to learn, and that advancements in imaging technology are paving the way for a brighter future in veterinary neurology.
From Vet NeuroJar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.